Residents of Kyabram were taken aback on Sunday to see a Nazi swastika and two Chinese flags scrawled with the words COVID-19 strung up on a phone tower. Police think the three flags were hung on the Bradley Street tower between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Dvir Abramovich is the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission. Dvir Abramovich, good afternoon.
Good to be with you. It's a pleasure.
Your reaction when you heard that, again, in regional Victoria, a Nazi flag has been hauled up for public consumption, this time along with two Chinese flags with the words COVID-19 scrawled on them?
Well, it's a sad day. It's a grim reminder, Nicole, that in the midst of this health and economic crisis, the virus of intolerance and hate still maintains a powerful presence in our community. And it's also, I think, a timely reminder that anti-Semitism and hatred never takes a vacation. I'm certain that every Victorian, every Australian will be appalled by this evil and warped act. And let's remember that whenever we see the Nazi flag flying, a few months ago, you would remember we broke the story about the flag in Beulah.
Yeah.
Whenever this Nazi swastika flag is flown in the skies of our nation, it dishonors, it tramples on the memory of our brave Australian soldiers who actually gave their lives to defeat Hitler. And it's also a kick in the guts of every Holocaust survivor. This is a very, very sad day.
Perhaps it was a condemnation of the origins of the COVID-19 virus.
I think that we have to be very, very careful because as the coronavirus continues to surge globally, we've got conspiracy theories that are proliferating rapidly online. We have to be wary that it doesn't take a life of its own and that communities, good and decent people, are not singled out and targeted for vilification simply because of the way they look or their ethnic origins. I want to tell people that anybody who flies the Nazi flag is a Hitler worshipper. They want to establish a Fourth Reich, and they would exterminate, if they could, anybody who they think is not worthy of life. So we have to be very vigilant when it comes to those who are openly celebrating the Nazi ideology. I don't think it has anything to do with COVID-19. I think white supremacists and neo-Nazis, the Nazi flag is their preferred choice of weapon. They're doing it to sow fear, to harass, to intimidate. We as Australians have to ensure that we are not falling victim to the ideologies of fear and division. So we have to stand with our Asian community. We should not allow these cowards to actually divide us.
You are behind this push to criminalise the flying of the flag. Can you tell me where you're up to?
Well, just before COVID-19 really came in, I gave an address to the Legislative Assembly Legal and Social Issues Committee in the Victorian Parliament. They're actually conducting an inquiry into anti-vilification protections, which was prompted by the work that I've done over the last few years. And I made it very plain and simple that the time for talking is over. And I've called on them for once and for all, that is on the Victorian government, because the Liberal and National Opposition has actually thrown their support behind my call to denazify, in a way, Victoria, and to bring in laws to criminalise any public display of the Nazi swastika or any symbols of the Third Reich. And I've told the Victorian government that they have to once and for all close the lid on this outrageous phenomenon and to ban the public displays. Homegrown racists and bigots are nourished by inaction. And we need to do the right thing. We can disagree on many issues, but I know that as Victorians we are unified in fighting this growing threat of bigotry. Nicole, for a Holocaust survivor or for the child or a grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, when they see the Nazi flag flying, it is as threatening as being confronted by a gun. It tears a hole in the heart. I don't think we can feel safe when we know that there are individuals with dangerous ideology in their hearts walking our streets and going to the lengths that we saw not just over the last few days, but also in Beulah. And I will remind people that over the last year, even Prime Minister Morrison came out and said that this swastika epidemic that has defiled our streets is absolutely sickening and disgraceful. So we find ourselves in a moral moment in this country where the garden of our democracy is being infected by the weeds of racism, and we have to act. We can't sit on the sidelines.
In January, a Nazi flag was flown in a Beulah front yard, as you have spoken of, and in November last year, 4 people wearing Nazi uniforms walked into a Wood End supermarket. Is there a regional link here?
Well, we know that the white supremacists, the far-right extremists, are dispersed not just in Victoria but across the country, in cells, in units. They talk to each other. And one of the beautiful things about the internet is that it created a superhighway, but it also provided with these bigots with the perfect weapon, and that is that they were able to spread their toxic and vile ideology and to talk amongst themselves inexpensively, instantaneously, and anonymously. I can tell your listeners that there are literally tens of thousands of digital platforms, whether it is Telegram or GapChan or 8chan, which are used as avenues and platforms for these people to plan and to communicate amongst each other. And this is a real war. It's a war between good and evil. It's a war that we have to win. And unless we actually understand the threat that we're facing, I'll remind you that Director of ASIO, Director Burgess, just a few months ago said in his annual threat assessment that white supremacists and neo-Nazis are a real threat. So this flag, we're all preoccupied and our minds are exercised by COVID-19 as it should. But this is a wake-up call that we don't need a Christchurch in our country, in Victoria, in Melbourne, to actually start fighting back.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Dvir Abramovich, the chairman of the Anti-Defamation Commission, about that Nazi flag that was flown above Kyabram a couple of days ago before being promptly taken down.